so now we're going to hear from our guest speaker, Elizabeth Stewart. She is a career appraiser of fine arts and antiques, and she's been active in this field for about 30 years. Her area of expertise is probably everything, but she does have a specific area that she really likes, and that's 19th and 20th century fine art and works on paper, as well as American and European 18th, 19th, and 20th century furniture. She received her undergraduate degree in architectural history, magna cum laude, from Tufts University in Boston, and she has a master's degree in historic preservation from the University of San Diego. She also holds a doctorate in mythological studies with an emphasis on material culture from Pacifica Graduate Institute. And her doctoral dissertation, The Material Image, Why Collectors Collect, focuses on the psychology of connoisseurs, hoarders, and fetishers. Her first book, by the Savvy Appraiser, which is what she calls herself, is Collect, Value, and Divest. And Elizabeth, you're up for an award for this book. So as your first book, congratulations. And what is that award?
It's called the Indie Award for Independent Publishers.
The Indie Award for Independent Publishers. So she has been nominated for an award for this particular book, and she's brought a few copies in case you're interested. She consults with her clients on how to create collections, find value and provenance, what to bequeath to heirs, and how and what to donate for tax benefits. For the past 9 years, Elizabeth has broadcast her own art and antiques radio program on KZSB AM 1290 weekly, as well as you've probably seen her weekly column, aptly titled Ask the Gold Digger, in the Santa Barbara News Press. So without further ado, I want to actually say another thing. I met Elizabeth at the Antique Automobile Club meeting. I'm a member of that club. We meet at Harry's once a month, and Marie Morshrow and I go together to that. And I heard her speak to the club, and she was so charming and so engaging. I thought, wow, she'd be great for our first M Club Lunch and Learn program. So I invited her, and her topic, I had my 16-year-old son with me, so that is a good litmus test. He listened to every word she said. He chuckled, laughed, got a real kick out of her, and I thought, okay, if she appeals to a 16-year-old, she's going to have broad appeal. So her talk was about the top 10 objects your kids do not want to inherit from you. And we laughed and had such a great time at that talk. I said to her afterwards, Elizabeth, you should really write a point of purchase book called The Top 10 Items Your Kids Do Not Want from You. And guess what? She did it. I've never had anyone take advice so seriously, but she did it. And this is her first pass. And she is going to tell us all about this topic. No thanks, Mom. The top 10 objects I don't want from you. Without further ado, Elizabeth.
Thank you for having me. This is so exciting. And Maria is absolutely right. It was her inspiration that led me to actually sit down and also I should say, my son, who's going to turn 30, when he was married, I sent one of those great big wooden pods to his house in Durham, North Carolina. My daughter-in-law was flabbergasted. And so I thought, I'm the person that's supposed to be telling folks about what things are and who wants them and why and how much they're valued. And I didn't catch on that there's different, I should say value is a concept that differs to different generations. And I thought maybe it'd be fun for you guys to see. This is a chart that I worked up. It took me about 30 years of looking at people's houses to realize that there were differences in different generational ideas of home. And so these are my thoughts, and it's at the back of my new book that Maria inspired, No Thanks, Mom.
So value as a concept, as I said, differs from different generations, and the stuff of our lives is truly the stuff, I think the stuff of our lives is truly the stuff of our lives. And what I mean by that is the concept of material. So material possessions reflect our personalities, our philosophies, our culture, and our economics. The phrase, if you think about the phrase, people say, does it really matter? Does it matter? Well, matter means material, right? We're made of matter. Matter is material. So the material things of life do matter, and they do reflect who we are up to a point. So for the first time in the history of the material world, if you guys can think about this, 2 generations are downsizing at one time. So your 80 to 90-year-old parents, for example, and you, for example, the boomers and the Gen Xers are downsizing together. And when people say to me, Elizabeth, you know, what's going on in the market? Nobody wants china, nobody wants silver, nobody wants crystal. That's the reason why. So those 2 generations are downsizing together. And estate planning, as Jorge knows, is more than wills and trusts, etc. It's about understanding provenance, or the personal story behind objects. And the stories we live through, up to a point, are personal possessions. So, No Thanks, Mom is a book about telling those stories, and sometimes the objects themselves. We'll talk a little bit about what you can do with objects your kids don't want. But sometimes we're going to talk about them in creative, non-objectifying ways. So you'll hear a lot when I talk to you about visual imaging. And what I mean by that is that's the younger generation's language. It's all visual. So I'm going to give you some clues how to present your objects that you would like your heirs to want in visual terms. And we're going to start by actually putting a positive spin on things. So there's 10 things you should save for your kids. And here's my suggestions based on years of looking at people's homes. Your first passport, your military discharge papers, 1 wedding photo, one object belonging to your oldest relative, a meaningful piece of jewelry, a photo of you with your newborn child, a favorite teacher's comment on their report card, a beloved dog tag, 1 object from each grandparent. And note, those are all small things. Now there's 10 objects your kids do not want, and my remedy for saving these declined treasures is to document these for your kids visually. So what I suggest is 1 narrative video. So get somebody that can run a video on the smartphone or a videographer to actually get you going around the house and talking about these things. And secondly, do 1 set of still photos. And then what you're going to do is send them to your kids. You're going to send them the video and send them the photos. And if you've got more than 1 child, you ask them to decide what they want based on those videos and those photos. Use visual language because that's their medium. And then ask them to give them a timeline. Say, you know, I'd like you to look at these things for about 3 months and then let me know what you want. Now, you'll know by the end of that 3 months that there's certain categories of objects that you're going to have a hard time convincing them that they want. And the top 10, in declining order, the top 10, based on my experience, for example, is books. Now, this is the 10th. So books are still popular, they're still out there, but there's a few clues about how to handle books. First editions are the ones that actually get the most money, and for that you need a professional. The more specific the field that the book deals with, the more opportunities there are for selling. So if you study an obscure language in some particular island off the coast of Japan, that will be more valuable than, for example, your, Yeah, she's saying, I don't. So with books, what you should probably do is think about selling those to a bookshop. We've got 2 in town here that I love. I love Eric Kelly at the Book Den and Ron Randall at Randall House Rare Books. Here's a typical book owner and another typical book owner. Number 9, I bet you guys all have one of these. A steamer trunk. And people say to me, oh, it was my grandmother's, I love it, I have to, give it to my kids. Here's a little clue, nobody wants steamer trunks. Now you're saying to me, Elizabeth, do you have 2 steamer trunks? Not only are those my 2 steamer trunks, but this one is one of those that has the entire wardrobe in it. It is about that big. And my son doesn't want it. I don't know why I still have it, but there it is in my garage. Along with that category, there's another steamer trunk in me. Along with that category is obsolete electronics. Nobody wants obsolete electronics. And everybody's got a few of them, as you can see. No thanks, Mom. That's a little tiny organ. Along with the obsolete, this I own, by the way. Another in this category is sewing machines. Here's a news flash. Nobody wants your sewing machine. Absolutely not. No sewing machines. Everybody's got a sewing machine, so that's in. This is another category. This is probably the category I hear most about. Little porcelain tchotchke figurines.
Are these yours?
Yes, I own these. How about this, Bradford collector's plates? Do you think your kids want these? My suggestion is, people say, well, what are we going to do with these? Now, I have really good suggestion for both categories, the little obscure frogs and bunnies and all the other porcelain figurines, and these porcelain plates. I don't know. My suggestion is a retirement home gift exchange. Donate them to the retirement home. This is category number 7, silver-plated objects. And a clue is, people call me all the time and they say, Elizabeth, I hope you're sitting down. I have Rogers Brothers, 1847. And I say to them, that's the company name. That's not the date of manufacture. So any kind of silver plate object, they are white elephant forms such as celery dishes and those things where the Pyrex fits into the lasagna things. Your kids don't want them at all. And wedding catering companies is my best suggestion for that. Does your daughter-in-law really want a polished silver plate? The answer is no. And that's how bad they can look if they've been stored for a while in plastic. The next category, number 6, heavy, dark furniture. Anything heavy, any in dark, your generations younger than you will say there's value in utilitarianism, not in the carving or the age of the piece. So think of it, this is the Steve Jobs IKEA generation, and unless it's mid-century modern, do you guys know what that is? Yeah? Mid-century modern is what you threw out in the 1970s. Unless it's mid-century modern, donate it. Now I own this. So this, unless it's mid-century modern, donate it. Category number 5, Persian rugs. Persian rugs and world textiles and weavings. Nobody wants those. And it's funny because Persian rugs used to be very valuable in the 80s. There was quite a market for Persian rugs. This is John's, our staff photographer at the back. John does all our art photography for our staff. And he decided that he was going to take a Persian rug of mine and put it down the middle of State Street at 4 in the morning. That shows you what he thinks of Persian rugs. And some of them can be very beautiful, but this doesn't fit into your daughter's Zen-like house. It will not fit into your daughter's Zen-like house. Beautiful but not valuable. Okay, category number 4, linens. Nobody wants hand-embroidered linens. They need ironing. They're labor intensive. My suggestion is give them to wedding gown seamstresses. There's wedding gown seamstresses. This is quite a fad now for wedding gown seamstresses that are making their own linen wedding gowns, and they need that lace and they need that trim. You know, this is a typical linen closet. Do you guys identify with this? Nobody wants linens. Sterling, now here's another John original shot. This is my sterling silver flatware in the sand at the beach. This is sterling silver is, here's the key to serving sterling silver. Either you value it by scrap value, in which you get the troy ounce. So you take it to some place like Paul Brown Paul or Giglio downtown on Figueroa, and you ask them, you know, can you weigh this? You take that troy ounce and you look at the silver value on the market, and then you also take the name, for example, and you look up what the antique value is. The antique value versus the scrap value will tell you what you want to do with it. If it's earlier than 1930, it's probably worth something because the heavier gauge sterling dates to before the 1930s. Okay. Another category that your kids do not want, and this is because the wine glasses are too small, is, and this is your crystal. Your kids do not want that. Do you know those wine glasses, they're just like 2 sips of wine for your kids, and they don't want those. And these can be quite beautiful. You can have all kinds of barware, for example, in one service, but it's also labor intensive, and also there's breakage, and it's too hard to pack and move. So your kids do not want your crystal, and more so, they don't want sets, but this is the thing your kids don't want the worst, which is your formal china. How many of you have tried to give away your formal china? Yes, yes, yes. I tried to send my son the Thanksgiving china, the Christmas china, the formal service that I use if I do a dinner party, and the supper service, and he said, what did he say? No thanks, Mom. Basically, formal china, and on the market, there's very little value in it. I was saying to this beautiful woman here that it's a good idea to identify the pattern you have. For example, she has rose medallion, which is Chinese export porcelain. That is more popular on the East Coast than it is on the West Coast. And some of the smaller specialty auction houses will take that. But for the most part, your formal china, even, this is mine, I call this early brothel. But I love it, but my kids do not want it. Can you imagine your daughter-in-law having this in her house? They don't want to store it. Okay, sadly, your 90 million boxes of family photos and papers, greeting cards, love letters, etc. 90 million boxes that you own, and this is just a taste of what that's me. This is just, that's me there. That's just a taste. This is a taste, that's me. My son does not want this, and basically what I told him, I said, you know, I've been saving this. I've spent $300 a month for almost 20 years on a storage locker, and you don't want my family photos. The best thing you can do to these is to digitalize them. Take them to a digitalized service, have them digitalized, and then the question is, what do you do with the actual paper? 2 things. You can sell them to a found image greeting card company, and there's a card company called Found Image that will buy these, and you can also take them to the Historical Society, and they can actually, oh, and John had a thought too. Being a photographer, he said there's a certain amount of silver involved, right, John, in some kind of, yeah, in some kind of what? In black and white, there's silver involved, and there are companies that'll buy bulk. And it's sad when you think about it, those are your family photos, but if you've got them digitalized, that's the way to give them to your children. Okay, This is my, let me go back. This is my 5-pile theory of downsizing. And it's very exclusive, and I think it works for most people. So let me tell you what my 5 piles theory is. You take 5 cardboard boxes or 5 shoe boxes. Take a smartphone and take some of your Post-it notes. And then you're going to make pile number 1. Pile number 1 are going to be your high rollers. What I mean by that is you start with the things that you know are valuable. And that's what you sort of say, these are the things I know are valuable. I'm talking about value monetarily. So you start with that and you say, I know that these things are valuable. And you know, you make a list of those things and you photograph those things. Your second pile is going to be the fine donations. Ironically, if you use the IRS 8283, that's a non-cash charitable contribution. You can take the contribution against your taxes, and that sometimes can make more money for you, depending on your bracket, etc. If you take that figure, that dollar figure, to your accountant, he can figure out whether it's worth you selling it or whether it's worth you donating it. Many cases, especially in Santa Barbara, where we've got kind of limited taste range, it's actually makes you more to donate. So that's your fine donations. Now then the third category is family jewels. And by that I don't mean just jewelry. I mean the things that you would like to die with. And those are the things you couldn't live without, the things you'll own till you die. And for these, you're going to need a visual description for your heirs. You're going to need a video tour to inform your heirs why you love them. So what that's going to look like is you standing in front of your grandfather's grandfather clock saying, this was my grandfather's, he bought it in Portsmouth, it is by this clockmaker, and this is what I know about it. And you say that on your video. You tell your heirs why you love what you love and why you would like them to claim them. Again, some of these are will fall into the donation category when your kids say, no thanks, Mom. Remember that you heard it from me. Between $2,000 and $5,000 worth of donation is the arena in which the IRS scrutinizes a donation the hardest because it's the most common. So for that, you need a little bit, maybe call me, I can give you a little bit of advice how best to prepare that 8283 form for non-cash charitable contribution. Then you've got your keepers. This is my china cabinet in my house, and this is the keepers that you really would like to keep. And let's say you're downsizing to move to a new house. Here's my advice when you think about your keepers. Plan your new house and your new space with your new space in mind. In other words, when you move, kind of look at the kind of rooms you've got, and moreover, look at the quality of light. Because you will find that things don't always work in the new light. This is really an important thing because a lot of people, I was talking to Linda, she said you move into a house, you have 4 times the stuff that you really need. And so when you leave the house, you know, you've got 5 times the stuff. And so when you're leaving the house for your next place, you kind of want to downsize to where you're thinking about your space and your quality of life. So going backwards, this is your last category. These are your piddly smalls. Now, why I say that's your last category is because most people start their downsizing with the piddly smalls. They make a big pile in the corner of their garage with these small things. Do you know what happens? They make that pile, let's say it's over in this pile, and you've got Aunt Mildred's doll from 1890. You've got that doll in the pile. You will wake up at 3 in the morning and you will find yourself gravitating over to that pile. And you'll look at that pile and you'll say, geez, you know, she's not going to get much money at the garage sale, Aunt Mildred's doll, so I might as well keep her. By the end of 3 weeks, that whole pile is back in your house. People always ask me, should I do a garage sale? The answer is no, you should not do a garage sale. The reason being is because you're going to spend at least 2 weeks If you normally work for $125 an hour and you spend 3 weeks on a garage sale, do you know that is a losing proposition? So actually, you're just going to have to give it away, I think. What I do is I use Steve's delivery service. When I get that pile in the garage, before I can take my glass of wine into that pile and go, oh, I should really take that porcelain chicken back in the house, what I do is I call Steve's delivery service to come the next day, so I don't get a chance to haunt that pile. So that's your pile, that's your piddly smalls that are going to go the next day with Steve's delivery service. Now, my next section, the 10 valuable habits of successful downsizers. So objects don't define your essence or your worth or your family values. The attitudes about home and home living have changed. And homes are no longer permanent. They're no longer nostalgic. And the idea of value, therefore, has changed. And so we see that in the marketplace, too. The idea of value has changed. So people say to me, Elizabeth, what is value today? I'll tell you, it's ease of life, adaptability, portability, enjoyment by friends and sharing, status and lifestyle markers, utility, functionality, compactness, short-term pleasure, hassle-free life, microwavable and dishwashable, and will lead to a humble brag. What's a humble brag? This is something I learned from my 30-year-old son. Humble brag is when you say, oh, I live such a Zen-like lifestyle that I don't need anything. You're humbly bragging. So, downsizers, what do downsizers do? Downsizers have a plan. They have a plan because they are going to give themselves a reward after the plan is over. They're going to take themselves to Hamilton, for example. They make a visual picture using technology, especially if they're moving. Remember I said different spaces equal different light. They make permanent donating decisions. Well, there I'm looking at a clock and then at an armoire. You make permanent, in other words, once you decide to donate, you do not Indian give. You don't say, oh, well, I better not donate that because somebody will want it. Once you decide to donate, you donate. So downsizers are permanent in their decisions. They call on experts. They call on, like I said, Steve's delivery service, which is here. They call on people to help, like appraisers, estate sale folks. They call on people who know things like coin experts and stamp experts. And you know, they send me pictures via email. It's always free. Send me a picture and I can tell you what I know about anything. They use flea market folks. This is another, and they use eBay folks. So if you know somebody, like you can call me and say, Elizabeth, who's going to the Rose Bowl? I know people that go. And so, you know, they use their experts. Here I'm looking at a Picasso. They actually take into consideration that storage lockers are the best business in this town, and they make so much money. And so, like I said, if you thought all the money that you spend in storage fees, it's probably not worth what's in the storage. Savvy downsizers always avoid using their, I will say husbands in this case. You never get your husband involved in any downsizing decision. It'll be a disaster. So here's some selections of husbands that are involved in downsizing decisions. They're sort of arguing, aren't they? So remember, downsizers do not use their husbands. And finally, downsizers allow themselves to have a maybe pile. A lot of people say, okay, you know, you're moving into a new space and you don't know if that house is going to support the things that you've selected. Do yourself a favor and for 3 months, have a storage locker. Just 3 months. Sign a contract for 3 months. Have a storage locker. That's your maybe pile. At the end of 3 months, go back to that storage locker and take a look. Half of those things you won't use. But that way there you'll feel comforted. At least I have a maybe pile of stuff. And like I say, they take advantage of a non-cash charitable contribution. So if you've got a painting or something fairly good that you would like to donate, remember that IRS rule, right? The 8283 form. You can take that deduction. So And finally, you don't, like I say, that pile in the garage, you do not visit it after you've had a glass of wine in the evening, after you've made that pile. Because it'll end up materializing back in the house. And then finally, have one charitable organization. We use in our office Second Story Associates. They are associated with the Housing Authority of Santa Barbara, and they take almost everything, and they have a truck. Second Story Associates in Santa Barbara. They take almost everything. So at the end of your downsizing journey, have one organization, when you're pulling your hair out, have one organization that you can call that can take almost anything. And we use Second Story Associates. So my conclusion is taste in the home, and what objects in the home means is shape-shifting. And moving from objects as personifying our narrative histories, moving into a language of impermanence is what's happening today. Today's aesthetics are not necessarily family-centered, but guided by the aesthetics of the prevailing technology of today, which is mainly visual and virtual. Although we don't have a choice about what we were to collect after our mother's will was read, I caution you. Here's my mom and myself. I caution you, no sneak attack packed cardboard boxes should be mailed to your children ever. And I thank you.